Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience, where they felt stuck, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others and finding possibility for yourself. Let's get into this week's conversation. And we are back for another exciting episode of Off the Comma. This week, I have Kevin Guest with me. Very excited to get into his story. And also, as I've mentioned on many other episodes, Kevin is another person who I haven't really had an opportunity to meet you yet, Kevin. And I am looking forward to getting to know Kevin through his story today, to learn more about him and add him into our community of storytellers. We have been so fortunate to have so many people come here and share with us their life experiences and their experiences with being stuck and getting unstuck, getting off the comma, as of course we talk about every week. And so it's going to be a great episode this week, and I'm very excited about it. So with that said, Kevin, I'm going to keep the opening short. I'm going to hand it over to you because today is your episode. It's your platform today. And so, Kevin, what we always do is, we want to get to know you. How would you like to be known as a person? And then kind of share with us anything else you'd like for us to know about you.
Well, that's a great question, and thanks, Paul. I appreciate the lead in, the opportunity to share my story. Hopefully, there'll be something here that will be of value to your listeners that will spur. I may not say anything, but they may think of something that will help improve their lives in some way.
Mm-hmm.
If to answer your question, how I'd like to be remembered, the first thing that comes to mind is I would like to be remembered as someone who had a very values-based life and stayed true to those values. Um, and values for me represents not only religious beliefs, but how I carry myself day to day at home with my family, as well as at work. And when I'm playing or whatever I might be doing, just remaining a person who wasn't perfect by any stretch, and I've made certainly a lot of mistakes, but I've done my very best to be who I represent.
Okay. It sounds like, the way that you would describe yourself is very reflective and also really thoughtful. When you say values based, it sounds like, there's a lot of thought that goes into how you want to be known and even as you said, how you want to be remembered.
I'm a musician and have been since I can remember. And one of the principles of music is the principle of harmony. And harmony is just actually airwaves that are
Mm,
congruent. And when they're congruent, they sound great together. When they're not, it creates in music what's called dissonance.
hmm
And so for me, when I'm living my values, I'm living in harmony. So it's ultimately what we all seek, I think, is inner peace, and
mm,
to find some peace in life. And for me, when I'm living in harmony, uh, and really living according to my true north, which are my core values, then my life is congruent. When I'm not, it's out of step, out of order, and I can feel it. I know it, and it messes with my inner peace. And so, when
mm,
we talk about reflective and when we talk about those kinds of things, um, you know, one of the things I'm learning is I've earned every one of these gray hairs on my head
mm,
is awareness and being self-aware is just such an important principle in every aspect of our life. And I look back and there are many parts of my life where I wish I was more self-aware, which then would
mm,
lean me towards being more reflective, which will help me uh, be a better person and be more present, be more in the moment, and be more forward leaning and failing forward versus failing backwards,
mm,
which I've found many times in my life. And some I still struggle with today is I set a goal every year. I do some goals, and one of the goals that I've done for years and I still haven't mastered is to stop negative self-talk. So
Hmm.
how I talk to myself is so important. And so uh, when being reflective can also be a negative thing because depending on how you're talking to yourself and showing yourself some compassion and some grace is so important and such an important part of this harmonious life. And everything to me kind of relates back to music, and so I
Hmm.
I um I can keep it on my mind that way as I think about music and thinking about being in harmony and living my life that way.
Yeah. Well, I want to reflect a couple of things, and then obviously we'll get you into your story here. So, well, first of all, I just want to say, like, I'm already connecting with some of the things you've shared just in your introduction and some of your description about yourself. But it's so funny because today has not been the best day for me, and you talk about self reflection. It's like what you put your attention on and so forth. So many of the words you just use to describe yourself and the things that you focus on. Like today, I was just like, and I was like, I know when I do this podcast interview this afternoon, there's something in there for me as well. This happens so often. So already I can tell I have made the right decision by showing up today. I'm looking forward to your story. So,
You bet.
um, you talked about values, and unless it's going to show up in your story, if it is, then let's skip this question. But if you feel like there's parts of this that you probably should talk about now or want to talk about now, then go for it. I was just curious, in addition to everything you've shared, what else would you say is important about your values, or is an important value? Or we can save it for your story. Up to you.
Um, I think probably for me, one of the most important values is integrity, which
Mm,
means what you're doing when people aren't looking, and when there's nobody home, when there's nobody that can look at your social media accounts, when
mm,
it's just you in the world, how are you acting and behaving? And even more importantly, what are you thinking about? And what consumes your consciousness is so important. And I
mm,
think the word integrity can be thrown around as almost kind of a throwaway kind of a value. You see many companies, when you see their stated core values, integrity is one of them. And the company that I've helped start and have worked for 30 plus years, integrity is one of our core values. But
mm,
for me, it's much deeper than that. It's just a level of consciousness, again, and being true to who you are and what makes you you and those kinds of things. And and I've found that it's different for everyone. And even the definition of integrity is probably different for many people
mhm,
because our backgrounds are so diverse and so different. And that's what's beautiful, I think, about humanity, and speaking
mhm.
in broad terms, is that there are so many great differences and can help us learn and become better people and better servants and better humans in society, which is, I hope, what all of us are striving towards.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Definitely, there's a lot of thought that goes into that value as well. Kevin, before we get into the five questions and the context of your story today, I always like to ask the guest, our guests, before we get started, as you think about the next, 30, 40 minutes or so in telling your story today, what would be your intention for yourself in the telling of the story?
Well, my intention for myself, and I'm glad that's a great question because I am a firm believer in stating your intentions. In fact, daily, for me, that is an element of prayer for me is my intention for the day, and really being clear about that and stating my intention. And so,
Mm,
as I think about this podcast and why would I be here and why would I do it, I'm hoping again that in some way Not necessarily the words that I say via your podcast, but it will bring something to somebody's consciousness that will
Mm,
help them in whatever way they're needing help. And it'll probably
hmm
be nothing I say, but how they feel. And so out of the next 30 or 40 minutes, the second subset to that is it helps me reflect and remember as we talk about these things,
mm.
because it brings front of mind things for me that are important and that I've learned through experiences. And so those are a couple things I would love to get out of the next 30 or 40 minutes.
I love that because that's exactly kind of what we do here, and why the way we do this is so important. Is that I'm not even just confident. I know that when we listen to other people's stories, the way we do here is that some stories we really, really connect with, and then they resonate for us, and we pull things out of it. Like, oh, there's something that person said that, man, that really resonates with me, or I'm really dealing with that too, or I love how they did that. I haven't tried that yet. And sometimes, I have a lot of times where folks will say, I listened to that episode and it just didn't really connect with me at all. And sometimes
Yeah.
there's like this kind of like, it's like a magnet. Like sometimes, an episode will pull you in and there's something there for you. And sometimes it kind of pushes you out and then kind of points you in another direction. What you're really looking for isn't here, but keep looking, right? And so
Yeah.
I just think there's great value in it. And that's another way of saying, and my intention today is to support yours by holding space for your story in the hopes that exactly that happens. So
Great.
awesome. Let's jump in then. So, the first of the five questions, Kevin, is where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
I have to say I love the notion of the comma and the use of the metaphor. Um, and I've actually been thinking about the commas in my life and
Mm.
applying. Like there have been plenty of periods. There have been exclamation points, um, which aren't necessarily good things, but a lot of commas. And I think commas are part of the human experience. And so you ask, where have I found myself stuck? Top of mind things. The number one thing, and probably the thing that still has me somewhat stuck, is I have a daughter that suffers from a mental illness, and in a drastic way. And
Mm.
I'm constantly worried about her well-being. And she's a mother of one, and that has got me stuck because I find myself worrying and thinking about her. And I wasn't able to become unstuck from that until I realized that I needed to worry about me. Uh, and I was actually in a therapy session, and the therapist looked at me and said, don't be offended when I ask this question, but uh, how empty of you to be so full of her? And
Mm.
that hit me between the eyes because that is so true. How empty of me to be so full of her. And so as I focused more on myself and worried about filling myself up and where I'm at, I'm able to be a better father. I'm able to be more present. I'm able to serve my other children. And it wasn't until then, till that really hit me, that I was able to find some peace. But the biggest karma that I struggle with is a child that is struggling with mental illness.
Mm.
Um,
I just want to acknowledge you for that. I talk to all kinds of people, not just on the podcast, but also, in the work that I do, and just because I'm a talker and I love people's stories and so forth. So I just want to acknowledge you for, that scenario and carrying that. That sounds like it's extremely challenging for you. And I can certainly relate to the stories of others too who have talked about this being a challenge. It's very much a thing today as well, right?
yeah, so that's the first comma that came to mind. Another
Mhm.
comma, um, this has happened to me several times where, an example, I was getting ready to go on stage at the Grand Ole Opry. I'm a musician,
Mhm.
and the way the Grand Ole Opry works is there are several artists performing that night, and it's a live broadcast. And so you stand off the stage while another performer is performing, and you
Mm,
have 2 minutes during the commercial break to get out on stage and have your guitar plugged in. And when they come back from the commercial break, it's an introduction, and boom, off you go. And I'm
mm,
standing off the side of the stage, and I remember thinking I was playing with an artist who has a big, huge hit, and we were going to play his big hit. And I'm standing there, and I start that negative self-talk. Okay, what if you forget the chords? What if you forget what to play?
mm,
What? And so I started, and so within a matter of seconds, I was in a full-blown panic attack. My mouth was dry, my breathing was
mm,
fast. I was just like kind of the room started spinning a little bit, and that was a massive comma. And
mm.
I was able to go out and play, but I don't remember the experience too
Wow.
well of the night. And here I was at the Grand Ole Opry, one of the most famous stages for a musician to play on a live national broadcast. And so the next time I went back, I've been back 4 times. The next time I made the conscious choice that I was going to arrive early, that I was going to go eat the popcorn that they had in the back, that I was going to go stand out on the stage, that I'd walk out in the audience while other artists were performing and really take in the entire experience and focus on being present, which again was a relief for that major comma. But the way I got out of the comma was I've got a toolbox that I've been learning to fill with things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And one of the things in my toolbox is a breathing exercise that I learned. And so standing backstage with my guitar on at the Grand Ole Opry, I went into this breathing exercise. And when
Mm,
you take in more oxygen when you're in that state, it calms you down. Your heart beats slower. Your brain is clearer because you're getting oxygen to the vital organs of your body. And it brings you present into the moment, not thinking about the what ifs or what might, but
mm,
it brings you.
mm.
So I did this breathing exercise that didn't totally snap me out of it in the moment, but got me through it. And so the toolbox is very important to me.
Yeah. Well, if I can, I'd love to just
Yeah,
jump in and kind of collect and acknowledge a
yeah.
couple of things, like the breathing and the toolbox and everything. You know, I have my own experiences with this too, and as do so many people. That's why so many folks are talking, and I love what you described, because what I found in my experiences is that, you know, I used to be skeptical, like, oh, the breathing isn't going to help, or the doing this, or the bending, or the stretching, or whatever, and it's like, because in my mind I thought that that exercise was going to somehow fix the whole thing. And
Oh,
what I came to realize is that no, it's as my coach would say, it's an intervention, right? All I'm doing
yeah.
is I'm just replacing the panic for that brief moment. So it's just that I'm not panicking. That's all. You have to solve the problem, you have to fix the thing. It might, you know, eventually, but like, it's just to replace the panic. And then my experience has been, and you can obviously share, it's your story, is that if I just replace the panic for a moment or two, then I regain control, and the panic isn't necessarily just going to flood back in when I stop the breathing or the whatever. So the objective is just to stop the chatter, to stop the spiral, at least in my experience.
Yep, no, I agree with that. You know, the brain is, and our thoughts are really physiological. As we're thinking, it translates to how our body activates because the brain releases chemicals, hormones,
Mm-hmm.
dopamine, those kinds of things. And so when you change what your brain is focused on for a minute, it literally changes the body chemistry, which changes how you feel in the moment. But you are 100%
Mm-hmm.
correct. It doesn't mean that it's fixing or making anything go away, because you're probably like, for me, I've had other panic attacks since then. It doesn't mean that this is a cure, but it is a tool that helps me respond, because all my brain was doing in that moment was trying to protect me, because I was
Mm-hmm.
going into something that, for whatever reason, my body perceived as something that was dangerous. And that's our
Mm-hmm.
brain's number one job, is to protect us, keep us alive.
Yeah.
And,
it,
you
it,
know, so that's you're changing all that just by
yeah.
simply breathing.
Yeah. I I want to acknowledge you too for this second comment that you've described, you know, you having had this opportunity to go now 4 times. and do something that many people don't get the opportunity to do, something big, something really visible. I am assuming, and you correct me where I'm wrong, something that you greatly aspired towards and were very excited about. So it's almost like the bigger we set our aims, then the greater the possibility of, fear and panic and so forth. But it's kind of part of the recipe, right? Like if we only set our sights small, then the risk is kind of small, and the bigger we set them, the greater the risk. But it's kind of the point too, in a way, right? and
Yeah.
and I do want to come back. I do have, I want you to respond, but I want to come back and talk about these comments a little bit more. But what are your thoughts there?
No, again, the brain, its primary function is to keep us alive.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever it perceives, for whatever reason, what we're telling it, and I'm not sure how all that works, but when it feels like there's danger, then we start panicking. And I was telling it when I was standing in backstage that I was probably going to forget the chords, that I was going to go out and fail, that I was going to do all these
Mm-hmm.
things. When you're exactly right, I played my first paying job as a musician when I was in the eighth grade. And
Mm-hmm.
I've never worked at a McDonald's, never had a job like that because I always played making money from music. And I paid my way through college playing 7 nights, sometimes 7 nights a week out in clubs, which is
Mm-hmm.
how I got through college. And so to be at the Grand Ole Opry is somewhat of a pinnacle event for me. So you are exactly right. That big aspiration, and I was thinking about how many times do we have a dream of some event in our lives, take somebody getting married or whatever it might be, or a big job or
Mm-hmm.
job interview, whatever it might be, your body is going to react to that situation in some form or fashion. I'm guessing mine would. And had I learned this concept 40 years ago, it would have saved me and helped me along my journey in a much better
Mm-hmm.
fashion, I believe.
Mm. So, how often do I hear that? How often do I say that? Right.
Yeah.
I want to come back. Since we talk about commas here, and you've shared two commas, and you've shared already some of the tools that you use. Let's go back before I get to the second question and beyond. Let's go back and look at the commas. And you can take us whatever direction you want. It's your story, but the question I'm about to ask isn't necessarily like, I want to know everything about your daughter. I want to know everything about the Grand Ole Opry. You share whatever you want to. I want to know about the experience for you. So, because you've talked about these commas and what happens for you, say more about what it's like when you're on that comma, the experience of what it was like to feel stuck, or whatever else that feeling was with your daughter, with performing. What did they have in common?
Well, it's funny you asked that question because I actually had a therapy appointment this morning, and we
Mm,
we discussed this very point. And the commonality in commas for me is the emotion of fear.
mm,
And so then the next question is, okay, what are you afraid of? And what I learned this morning is to be curious about fear. And it'll
mm,
help me as I'm sitting on these commas in the emotion of fear, which seems a little counterintuitive, but to be curious about it. And so I went through an exercise this morning, which was okay, hello, fear. Why are you here? What am I supposed to learn from you? Why am I reacting this way? How am I feeling it in my body? And start asking myself these kinds of questions to help understand it better and again, to hopefully have my body react differently when moments of fear come along. But with my daughter, certainly fear. With the Grand Ole Opry, certainly fear. In business,
mm.
the commas I've had in business, the emotion of fear is what has really stopped me in my tracks.
It's really common, right? But it's also it's common amongst us, and yet it has its own unique flavor, scent, feeling, fingerprint for each of us, right?
Yep, for
And
sure.
that's one thing I like to do here with these conversations. I talk about this often, right? Is often we can sit here and listen to your story, and because we have these common experiences, we can make assumptions like, yep, I know exactly what he's talking about. Oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine being in front of people. But this is where I like to go a couple of layers deep and really make it specific for you and understand more about you. What are those fears, or is there one common fear, or what have you learned about the fears that you hold?
So I've learned that my fear uh, trigger in me is all about survival. And when I was a young boy, part of my survival that I perceived, I should say, as my survival uh, was a codependent relationship with my parents and my siblings, and trying to please everyone so that we wouldn't have any kind of, you know, discomfort and any kind of difficulties in the family. And I perceived myself as the person that was responsible for keeping those waters calm, which translate today as a 62-year-old man. That isn't healthy, and it hasn't been
Mm,
healthy. And so as I learn more about codependence and the unhealthy behaviors of being codependent, trying to people please, trying to be Mr. Fix It, trying to keep people from actually falling and hurting themselves, and learning how to pick themselves back up and those kinds of things. Um, the codependent side of it has initiated this concept of fear because, for instance, with my daughter, many times throughout her life, I thought I was helping her when in actuality, I wasn't. I should have let her fail more instead of me being there to catch her before she hit the ground.
mm,
And I was actually stifling her. It's kind of like the little bird that gets pushed out of the nest and it has to fly. I was kind of clipping her wings a little bit, but it was
mm,
all because how it felt for me. And so until I realized, like for instance, reaching out to my daughter, am I reaching out to her because I truly care about her, or am I reaching out to her because I'm trying to make myself feel better? If I'm trying to make myself feel better, that's a codependent behavior, which is not good. If I'm
mm,
truly
mm,
reaching out as a dad because of her, and there's a huge difference in that for me, and those kinds of behaviors really they are the foundation of me being fearful uh, in many circumstances, and it goes back in my belief for me personally as a codependent behavior that I learned. And when I lost control from a codependent perspective, then I became afraid.
mm.
So I hope that answers your question.
It does, and in fact, I was furiously writing notes here too. You might have seen me grimace a moment ago. Man, to self-reference for a moment, like I can really relate to this. Having a couple of things, I'm going to put some fingers up so I don't forget because I'm 55. I start to forget. Um, Growing up in a household where I've described myself as like I was the only functional person in a household full of adults, and being, but same thing, I use different words, but like peacekeeper, I couldn't stand the fighting and the yelling, and I would try to make everybody calm, and yet what a dangerous and uh questionable, hope to have there, because trying my best to keep everybody calm, but yet having zero control over it. They were going to erupt whenever they were going to erupt. But so I grimace because it's like, man, I can relate, and I, I can kind of empathize with that a little bit. But also, too, man, when you said, "Am I doing it for them or am I doing it for me?" That's really powerful. And what I was thinking of is it's really powerful to see you describe it in that way. It's really powerful for all of us to think about those questions? Because some of us may say, oh my gosh, I kind of do that. I too may be codependent. Others may not be codependent, but they're valuable questions to ask, right? What is my intention when I pick up the phone to call this person, or when I go once again over there to clean up their mess? And then it seems like it leaves us with this element of choice too. It's like, okay, I'm doing that because, I'm doing it for me. And now stop. I don't want to do that. I want to change that trajectory. Or I'm still going to do it, but at least I'm doing it with awareness and by choice. I don't really have an agenda in saying that other than to kind of reflect what you've said and then share some of my takeaways from that. Like, I just hear from you, which no surprise based on what you shared with us, right? A lot of reflection, as you said, and a lot of also, as you said, being more aware of not only what you've done, but what you are doing.
Yeah, and I want to also make the statement, by no means am I saying that we shouldn't take care of ourselves and we shouldn't do things in the name
Mm,
that we think we're being selfish, because self-care is another very important piece of the puzzle for me, to be very intentional about doing things that fill me up, that bring me joy,
mm-hmm,
and it sounds a little selfish, but you just have to be very real and honest with your intentions, and be very intentional. And if I'm
mm-hmm,
going to do something, especially when it's a very volatile situation, um, like with my daughter, where it's truly life and death, and it has been at times. Um, it's a very, very fuzzy line. And,
mm-hmm,
there's a lot of, if I don't call them, am I going to feel guilty? What if this happens? What if that? All those kinds of things. But for me, coming back to that, am I really doing it to help her, or am I really doing it to help me? And I need to be clear on that. And
mm-hmm,
both are correct answers, by the way, in my opinion. But don't think you're in the name of trying to help somebody else when you're really trying to help yourself. That clarity, I think, really, really is important, but it is, for me, one of the hardest things
mm,
I've had to overcome in my life,
mm.
or work on, I should say.
Yeah. Well, and I would imagine because, I talk about all this all the time with myself, with clients, coaches, and friends, right? It's like you said, you gave us two kind of scenarios and examples. You can still do it for them, you can still do it for you. But again, back to your intention and your motivations, right? Like at the end of the day, I can still do either or both, but which one is going to get me to the place that I want to go? Which one of these is going to make me feel good, right? Like, because you can say, "Well, I'm doing it for me, but I'm going to do it anyway," and then end up with resentment,
Yeah.
or I'm doing it for them, and then do it, and then realize no, it really was about me, and end up with resentment or something else. So it just seems like, what exactly you said, that awareness and that kind of really being conscious of why you're doing it can have so many uh, uh, effects, right?
Yeah, and it comes back again, kind of 360, back to fear,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when you're doing something, you're not clear why you're doing it. So if I'm trying to do something for my daughter that is for me and I'm not clear about it, I have no control over that. I have no idea how the outcome is going to come. The intention is misguided, in my opinion. And so then fear is the end result, which actually
Mm-hmm.
compounds the issue, and it doesn't help her and it doesn't help me. And so
Mm-hmm.
it just feeds into it.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think being clear on your intentions of why you're doing things is so important.
I agree with you there, and I appreciate you sharing that. Let me ask the second question, and it'll give you an opportunity to say more, but also if there's anything else you want to go back into the story and expand on. So it's not a like stop and continue. But the second question is, when you look back on these commas that you've described, what did it create for you? And I'd like to add a second part to that, which is I don't know that I'm still entirely clear on what exactly was the fear of. So take us wherever you'd like to take us.
So, for me, when I think about the commas, and your question was create, what did it create for you? And I would
Mhm.
modify that a little bit. And what is it creating for you? Not
Okay.
what did it
Yeah.
create? Because I'm still very much a work in
Mm.
progress on very, very many levels. What it is creating for me is the ability to find some calm and peace. And what it is creating for me is more meaningful relationships, like with my wife, with my grandchildren, with my other children, because I'm able to be present with them and really have an authentic relationship versus always worrying about what's going on somewhere else. It's allowed me to be more present and think about, okay, what's happening now, and the meaningful relationships that is creating.
Mhm.
And also, I think it's helping me create a clearer picture for my future. And again, I'm not a young guy. I'm on the tail end of my career. I'm a grandfather. Uh, and so, but I do think about the future and what do I want the future to be. And I think it's very much in my control. I have choices. I actually created a wristband that I wear, and it says happiness is a choice.
Mm.
And so I'm going to choose happiness. Like today, if you had a bad day, you're choosing to have a smile on your face and be present and show
Mhm.
up. Um, we're full of choices, and I've been unhappy plenty, and I don't like that very much. So I'm going to choose, although easier said than done.
Mm.
But yeah, so the commas have created for me those things. Um, and also have created a level of success that I would have never expected or wasn't anticipating in my life in the business world.
Mhm.
Um, Also, in the music world and in my personal life, I think my wife and I have been married 42 years.
Wow,
I think
congratulations.
42. Yeah, I think that's, yeah, 41, 42 years. Oh, and um, uh, I'm still working on we're still working on a relationship. Interesting thing happened when our kids were all grown up and married and out the door. I came home one day and my wife had sitting on the counter the book, The Five Love Languages. And
Mm.
she looked at me and said, Kevin, you're not the same person that I married 30 years ago. And
Mm.
I'd like us to relook it and take a moment to reset where we're at. And let's just read this book together. And so, of course, I want to be a good husband and a good father. And so I dove into the book. And at the end of the book, there's a test for you to determine what your love language is. And when I got to the end of it, um, I got my wife's love language wrong because
Mm.
after 30 years of marriage at that time, I was showing her love the way I like to receive love, not necessarily the way she liked to receive it.
Mm.
And so I
Mm.
found out her love language was service. So then what did I start doing? I started making sure to take the trash out and do the dishes and sweep the kitchen floor and do some of those things. And then I was hitting a home run. But see, my love language is touch. And so holding hands when we go to the store or things like that, that is important to me. And so the relevancy of all that has come full circle as I think about the commas, what I've learned, where I'm at. For many people, a major comma in life is when they become empty nesters
Mhm.
or when they
Mhm.
have a major life change through retirement, job changes, those kinds of things become commas. But for me, although I knew we were potentially in a comma, man, I was wanting to do whatever I could. Just like with my daughter, what did I do? I went to therapy. I
Mm.
immersed myself in trying to help myself be better because of all the mistakes that I made, that I realized I was making along the way.
Mhm.
And so that for me is what I learned. And and what I've created from the commas.
Yeah. Well, and I so appreciate you sharing that. And I mean, a couple of things that come up for me is that, especially when you're in a relationship for that long, we're still working on it, but isn't the point you're always working on it, right? It's like a garden. A garden yields,
That's right.
fruits and vegetables for 42 years. Wasn't because you got it to a certain place and stopped. That's when it
Yeah.
dies, right? So you're always working on
Yep.
it. And then it's like just a reflection that I would love to hear your kind of reaction to is um you talk about the love languages, and what came up for me is like, man, it's not a matter of whether or not we get the love languages right. It's, are we communicating about them and understanding when they're different? It's not that you both have to be one or both have to be the
Nope.
other, but you both have to know what each person's is so that you can respond and react to it, right? So it sounds like that's exactly what y'all did.
Yeah, I mean, awareness is so important and understanding that things evolve and things change. And I
Hmm.
certainly am not the same person that my wife married 41, 42 years ago.
Sure.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm definitely not, and she's not.
Hmm.
But our desire is to continue, and the way to continue is to become aware. And for me, it was a big awakening, and now I'm more conscientious about different ways, small ways, just to render
Hmm.
some service, which really is
Yeah.
helps the one I love.
Well, and that comes to this observation I'd like to make, and you tell me, if I'm off or what you think about this. But having only known you through your story, what I'm noticing is, from a childhood where you use the word codependent, but you also talked about being a people pleaser, the one trying to kind of keep everybody calm and so forth, to an adult who's responding to a wife has said, we need to look at some fundamental elements of our relationship. I think of this element of underused and overused traits, but you've gone from subconsciously or unconsciously people pleasing as a child to consciously responding to your wife as an adult. And like in my mind, down here you could say, oh, bad, and all these words, and up here, no good, and all these words. But the arc or the thread is like, and it seems to be an element of adaptability, responsiveness, flexibility in there. I'll stop. I mean, what are your reactions to that?
Well, for me, again, this is a business, music, relationship concept that I think is what came to mind as you were talking was the notion of relevance. And
Mm,
how do we remain relevant to the significant people in our lives, to kids, to employers, to fans, to whatever it might be in our lives,
to
uh,
ourselves.
to ourselves. I'm glad you said
Mm-hmm.
that because that's so important. That's probably the most important. And the whole notion of relevance, and that's a very fluctuating part of life, I believe, is the notion of staying relevant, which is a constant moving target. And so with my wife, me staying relevant to her where she's at in her life and meeting her where she's at is highly important to me because that's one of my core values that we talked about earlier. And I want to
Mm-hmm.
live in
Mm-hmm.
concert with that core value. And so I want to do what it takes on that side of things with that core value, which is family. And certainly my wife is the center of that for me. And so, yeah, I want to remain relevant to her, and relevance is an important part of today's
Mm-hmm.
society, what's going on in the world today, and mostly importantly with relationships and ourselves, like you said.
Yeah. Kevin, let me jump into the third question, and then we'll kind of start to navigate ourselves towards the end of the podcast. But third question is a really important one to me, and that is, as you look back on the commas that you've described, what have you learned, or what are you learning, since you're keeping it in the current context too? What have you learned, or what are you learning about yourself as a result of sitting on these commas?
So I'll quickly share a story that just popped into my mind that I wasn't thinking of, but I've been the CEO of a large multinational company that's publicly traded, and we had a short seller attack that his whole he created a whole bunch of false information about our company so that it would drive the stock price down. And a short seller, the way
Mm,
it works is they bet on you failing. So
hmm
the more it drops, the more money they make. And so all
GameStop.
this false information was put out. So the Wall Street Journal picked it up. It triggered an FBI investigation and the Department of Justice and the SEC because we're publicly traded. All of these things started happening and started hitting me, which was a major comma. and
For
and
sure.
and so when you ask that question, we I could have we could have gone after him. We could have taken very aggressive action and been vindictive. But I decided at that time, no, we are going to focus on growing our company. We're not going to focus on that side of it. And so when you ask that question, I wouldn't have prior to this conversation thought about this as the answer. But one of the things
Mm,
I've learned about a comma for me is patience and
mm,
taking a time to have a breathing space. And we want to react just boom. We want to, especially when we're attacked, and especially when your daughter's in the hospital in the emergency room, especially when whatever's happening, it's very hard sometimes to take those major commas, which for me has helped me learn patience and helped me learn that it's okay to take some time and not respond immediately and be patient throughout these. And as I'm more and more patient, I'm making better decisions for the benefit of all those around.
yeah, and it also seems like what's coming up for me is also like it seems like it gives you a sense of autonomy, control, power over the potential fear that could arise as well.
Well, I mean, fear again is back to that's the root emotion here that's driving me.
Hmm
And so you hit the nail right on. You should be a therapist, by the way. But
I am a coach.
the end of the story, by the way, of the corporate thing is the guy ended up is been in prison for stock
Mm,
manipulation. So that all got solved. But in the meantime, it was a major, major mess that taught me patience.
wow. Yeah, and what I hear in that too is, which I think was the spirit of your answer, which is through these other commas and what you learned about yourself, it prepared you for something that could have been just a complete, yeah, I mean, it could have derailed you entirely. And
Oh,
so the hard things don't stop coming when you develop these skill sets in yourself, when you have that toolbox, when you have that self-awareness. The hard stuff doesn't stop coming, but the way you react to it, respond to it, train changes, and it sounds like dramatically changes.
yeah, yep. And if
Yeah.
you think about all high performing athletes, um, the highest performing athlete has learned how to respond to their opponent's behavior differently than those who aren't as high
Mm,
performing, and that's a key part of their success is how they
mm.
respond to opposition.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man, there's that. Oh, so much we can get into there, right? Like that is the thing. Like it's just how do we, and I don't even know that I care about the phrase master ourselves, but it's applicable, right? But it's like how do we master, or how do we develop relationships with those, kind of sabotaging parts of ourselves?
Yep.
Since we're talking about change, let's go to the fourth question then. So, as you look back on these comments that you've been sharing with us, what has changed for you, or what continues to change for you?
So I'm not just saying this to be cliche or because we're on a podcast, but I truly, for the first time in many years, I'm at a place where I'm feeling some peace.
Mm,
And I'm feeling that like I'm flying out tomorrow to Nashville, playing a show a big show, and I'm just going to have a great time. And then I'm going up to Montana to be with all my children and grandchildren at a lake to just spend a week of family time. And there have been times when those vacations have been torture for me because I'm
Mm,
so worried about how everyone's doing, and I'm trying to be the peacekeeper and trying to do this and trying to do that. Well, not anymore. That's not happening
mm,
for me. Not that I don't have the inclinations, but I've asked my wife, by the way, I've said, will you please call me out when you see me running to somebody's aid, or when you see me, and we've learned a lot together about codependence. Will you please,
mhm,
just in a very nice way, help me be aware, because this is something I'm working on and I'm trying to get better at doing. And it is bringing me peace, but all of it
mm.
is because I'm working on myself. I'm not trying to work on somebody else.
And I have to acknowledge you for what I believe I see in this is, and you're not asking anybody else to fix it, but you are asking other people to participate in helping you hold yourself accountable to it.
For sure. Absolutely.
Powerful. And the other thing that came up for me, Kevin, and tell me what your thoughts are, is like it seems like, first of all, I could just tell the shift in you as you just told that story. When you talk about the piece, you just kind of, there was an element of just relaxing, and you kind of started grinning and smiling, like I could see how you were anticipating the fun. And it's like you're allowing yourself to be the person and not the role, because previously, a lot of this anxiety, it sounds like, came from this need to play a role, peacekeeper as a child, the worrying father, the fixer, the solver, and all the things that you've already shared with us.
Yep. Yeah, it's again, I believe, for me personally, faith is a big part of it, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm implementing that as best I can,
Mm-hmm.
and self-awareness. All the kinds of things we've been talking about are just, again, back to values. Those are my stated core values,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't been great at living some of them, but I'm trying to do better.
Mm. Well, that brings us to the fifth question then. So, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
Hard work. Um,
Mm.
that's what it looks like for me, doing the work. Um, it's For me personally, none of this is easy.
Mm.
But I don't see getting off the comma without really putting in the effort and putting in the work. And it's kind of a leap of faith where you just put one foot in front of the other, but you have to put one foot in front of the other to make progress. They say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, that whole thing. It
Mm-hmm.
is so true with what we've been talking about. It's taking the step, and it might be one step forward and two steps back. But for me, getting off the comma is just doing the hard work and moving and trying to fail forward, not fail backwards, and learn from my mistakes and try and be better today than I was yesterday.
Mm. And isn't it interesting too? Because when you talk about doing hard work and putting in the effort, it's like it's all hard work, really. When you
Yep.
talked about these commas and you talked about what it created for you, and the fear, the anxiety, the work you put into trying to control outcomes and circumstances and so forth, it's all work. So if you're gonna be working hard one way or another, it sounds like you've made a choice to put in the hard work on the thing that's going to get you to better outcomes or better experiences.
Yeah, and I think the harder work you do, there's a saying my wife and I have, and I know it's not unique to us, but we say we're getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the hard work, and whether you're trying to build your muscles up or whatever it is, no pain, no gain, whatever you want to call it, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that's how you progress and get stronger.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that the truth? Well, Kevin, we could talk about so many things, and unfortunately, podcasts, have to stay within a container too.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and bring it to a close. So, for folks who do want to hear more, learn more, or maybe they're curious to hear more about some of the things that you've kind of hinted at for us, whether from performances to the work that you do and so forth. I will put all the links in the show notes. Where can people find you?
Very simple, kevinguest.com. That pretty much is the keeper of most everything relating to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can see and find out whatever is your interest, whether it's musical performances, whether it's running a company, all of those kinds of things. I'm just a kid who grew up in a small town of Montana that wanted to be a
Mm,
rock star. And for some
mm,
reason along the way, I've been blessed with major musical experiences along with running a big multinational company. Most importantly, though, raising 4 kids and now with 7 grandkids. Yeah,
hmm.
yeah.
Nice. Well, Kevin, one last thing. I was making myself a note too. One last thing that we do, we wrap every episode with the section that I call acknowledgments, because obviously this podcast is all about lifting up voices, giving a space for people to share their stories. And it feels like your story wouldn't be complete if we didn't give you the opportunity to also lift up others. And so with acknowledgments, it's your opportunity to boost, lift up, give a voice to, promote others who matter to you. It could be causes, organizations, other creators, or people within your immediate circle or sphere. Who would you like to acknowledge? We'll make sure that they get referenced in the show notes.
Well, I mean, I would be nothing without my good wife who's put up with me for all these years. Her
Mm,
name is Lori. Lori Guest, and she's on her own journey, very, very strong, and just a great example to me. As far as causes go, you can find that on kevinguest.com, but I did write a book, and 100% of the proceeds are being donated. There are 2 orphanages in Thailand where all the children are victims of sex trafficking, and they were starving. And my goal with the book was to raise enough money for 1 million meals for these
mm,
orphanages, and I think we're about just over 2 million at this point. And so
nice.
um, that's a way to support. If the book, 100% of it, I don't get a dime. It all goes directly to, um, and the book is called All the Right Reasons, and discusses a lot of the principles we talked about today.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing those things. So, like I said, we'll make sure that that ends up in the show notes so folks can easily reference them and find those causes and also back to you and your website. So, Kevin, thank you again so much for coming today, for sharing all of this, experience that you shared. And I can certainly speak for myself. There was much of this that resonated with me. I'm confident that there will be plenty that others will take for themselves from surprising points as well as obvious points in your story. So thanks for
Thank you
coming
so
on.
much. Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Have a great rest of your week.
You too.
What an honor it is for me to hear and share these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way. Think about what you learned from this conversation. I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling or reflection, because surprises can reveal themselves to you when you write your thoughts down. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode and follow the podcast here on this platform and all social media at Off the Comma. Feel free to interact and comment. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.